through. Were we borrowing it? Was it a grant? If it's a grant, in exchange for what? Look, I have no business of picking between the competing middle powers. But the mechanism worries me. I'm interested in sustaining the state as well as improving the livelihood of our people. Any external relationship we have with any country has to contribute to strengthening the state and to improving the livelihood of our people. The Emirate approach is quite worrisome from the experience inside Ethiopia as well as from their activities elsewhere. Inside Ethiopia, as I said earlier, and this is not before saying this in public, for the last 7 years, I have been meeting the Emirates. And my message has always been consistently, what are you doing? What's your relationship? Are you having a relationship state to state? Are you investing in an individual or in a state and a society? Evidence clearly shows the Emirate investment is on the person of Abiy and with no dividend for the state or for the society. The state and society has not gotten any stronger. Abiy has been able to consolidate power and survive multiple challenges through their money, through their drones, their weapons. But the Ethiopian state continued to deteriorate. One, this worries me about our relationship with the Emirates. Second, what we are seeing in Sudan, in Somalia, in Yemen, in Libya, wherever there is Emirati footprint, we don't see a project of state building. We see a project of destruction of the state. We don't see a project of building social cohesion. Instead, they are financing social fragmentations. Someone was saying, I don't know, I think I was talking with you, where we said the only place where the Emirates are supporting a government is in Ethiopia. They are not supporting, that's a mistake. They are not supporting the government. They are supporting a ruler who is acting not as a statesman, but as a non-state actor. What distinguishes a statesman from a non-state actor? What distinguishes a prime minister, a president, from a rebel leader? A prime minister or a president, his relationship with external players would be through a structured, institutionalized state apparatuses. There's little difference between how Emirates deals with Abiy and how Emirates deals with the various entities in Somalia, the various warlords in Sudan and in Libya. I think this puts us in a very, very difficult position. When you bring this to a GERD, our internal mismanagement of politics, as well as our quite harmful relationship with the outside world, has made us so weak that today, let alone resist the pressure on GERD. I don't think it's only about GERD, by the way. It's about making us sign an agreement that will prevent us any development on the Nile down the road. We are at a position where, let alone resist. You said earlier, in 2019, 2020, we were able to resist. Now we cannot resist. The government cannot resist because the government is literally in the pocket and being squeezed from left and right. And the society cannot resist. One, it's been fragmented. And second, it is confused. It is confused because what is President Trump talking about? Why the government quiet? Where are we heading? Where are things? So our society is confused and fragmented, and the state has been captured by external entities. And the fate of our national interest has it became subordinate to individual interest. The outcome is complete collapse of the ability of the state and society to fight for its interest.
It's important to point out, Jawar, and to discuss the direction that the government is outlining, particularly with this, narrative of the tale of two waters. The ruling party has clearly outlined that having a sovereign access to the Red Sea is one of the indisputable national interest for Ethiopia. Now, we briefly discussed about this with you when you first appeared in this podcast, Jawar, that you are of the view that there is no Ethiopian that would dispute for Ethiopia to have access to unimpeded access to port use and to diversify its commercial usage of ports other than Djibouti. I think Ethiopians in general agree with that, and we agree, and I agree myself. But Jawar, I don't know how we can frame this intersection that the ruling party created of the tale of two waters, which is the GERD, the Nile water, which is the source of the GERD, and its ambition to access the Red Sea. Jawar, do you see a complication there? Do you probably see the ruling party for its stated ambition of having a direct and sovereign access, maritime access to the Red Sea, that it could probably end up compromising the sovereignty of the GERD? Is this a worry that keeps you awake at night?
More than on the GERD, even for the survival of the state itself. Look, myself and vast majority of our citizens, we believe we cannot be spectators in the Red Sea, where states small and big, far and near, participate in the Red Sea, Indian Ocean security and political theater. We cannot be spectators. We cannot be spectators because any fallout, any development in that area directly affects us because our entire trade comes through this route. And this is our backyard. This is our sphere. What happens in Somalia or Somalia inland or in the Somali water, in the Djibouti side, in the Eritrean side, does directly affect us. Therefore, we have to have a say. We have to have a say. Any attempt to completely shut us off is unwise, is unfair, even if this generation of Ethiopians are too divided or too fragmented to assert. Down the road, it will be a continuous, struggle. That said, the way we approach it need to take into account our domestic capabilities, our domestic realities, our neighbors' realities, as well as international and regional dynamics. Starting from, the debacle with the Somaliland agreement, all this sea access politics Abiy pushed was untimely, unwise, and without any considerable thinking and planning. Look, this is not new. We had this conversation with them 2018, 2019, and later on after prison as well. But this agenda was pursued not so much because he actually meant to secure it. One, it's a tactical diversion from domestic challenges. Second, which for a long time I resisted to accept, but it seems increasingly a fact, that this was an agenda pursued by Emirates through Ethiopia. That's what complicates things. For example, Saudi is our biggest trading partner. I think they're our number one destination for our export, and millions of our citizens work there. We have strong relationship. I don't think they have that much of a strong opposition to our presence on the Red Sea. But if we are seen as a proxy for the Emirates, the whole game plan changes, the whole calculation changes, and that's what's happening. Now, a year ago or 2 years ago, maybe it was the Eritrean government that was accusing the Ethiopia of, advancing an external interest. But now we have multitude of analysts and the state that are suspecting that Ethiopia's push or Abiy's push for Red Sea access is not because Ethiopia wanted it, but because somebody want to find a foothold on this side of the Red Sea through Ethiopia. That is really gaining ground. That is gaining ground among analysts, among observers, among diplomatic community in our region and elsewhere. This is complicating, and this has become quite useful to Egypt because for a long time, us and Egyptians we have been debating, disputing for eternity about this Nile issue, and at some point we are going to have to come to an agreement. Of course, they have been leveraging their international presence, their international leverage to pressure us for a long time. We have been resisting it by using our domestic unity on the Nile issue, as well as mobilizing our neighbors. Now, back in the day, the only advantage they really had was their influence on international institutions and some great powers. As far as domestic and regional, particularly Africa, was concerned, things were favoring us during Mallas, during Mengistu, during Haile Selassie. Now, even regionally, because of this misguided push of access to the sea, which threatened so many of our neighbors. It threatened the Djiboutians, of course, put us into direct confrontation with Somalis. It even scared the Kenyans. With the support for RSF, we alienated the Sudanese. Now, almost all our neighbors are fearful of our aggressive approach. They are forced, or they are pressured, they are cornered into taking side with Egypt. So regionally, our neighbors are now taking side with Egypt. Across the Red Sea, Saudi is now taking side with Egypt. Internationally, we have the Americans taking the side with who is supporting us. Even Emirates, I do not believe Emirates will stand with Ethiopia when it comes to the Nile issue. So we are all alone. And when standing alone, we are so fragmented and we have a leadership that's completely lost the game.
It becomes important for me to highlight, I think 2 weeks ago, I had a podcast with another guest where some of these issues were discussed. And my guest at that time is of the view that, the Ethiopia's approach right now is, following a strategic silence and exploring without necessarily, attaching itself to an end game of loyalty with one force or another, but exploring its own options with different, countries and forces, and exploring its own options as well for its demand for access to the sea. When I say about Ethiopia, it's the ruling party that I was referring to. But we are seeing the recent news that is dominating the Middle East and Horn of Africa is the Saudi-UAE rivalry. And I don't see in the domestic media, particularly, in the highly monopolized media landscape by the state in Ethiopia, to discuss about Ethiopia's exposure. Also to the GERD, it's also the same. I don't see much discussion, deliberation, public debate about that. And I know some of them would say the reason why we're not responding to this pressure coming from Washington about the GERD is that the GERD is built. It is a done deal. So that is the reason that is given to. I'm just mentioning that one here as a disclaimer. Jawar, the Saudi and the UAE rivalry these two countries have moved from managed competition to a very aggressive and open confrontation across Yemen. And it's the same in Sudan and in Somalia and across the Red Sea. This is transforming the regional environment in which Ethiopia operates. And Ethiopia is expressing its need to be present. But Addis Ababa is deepening its strategic alignment only with Abu Dhabi, as it was recently seen in the new strategic document that they have signed a few weeks ago. I think it's fair to say that this is increasingly exposing